The advertisement was a narrow strip of ink at the bottom of a street Louis newspaper, squeezed between notices for farm tools and miracle tonics. It promised steady land, a lawful marriage, and a life away from factory smoke. Elias Crowder's name was printed with a neatness that suggested order and honesty. He described himself as a rancher of means, God-fearing, widowed young, seeking a woman, of sound character, to help keep house and share his name. For many, the ad was forgettable. For Mara Ellison, it was a lifeline. Mara folded the paper until the words softened and tucked it into her coat. She had learned to read late, but she read carefully. She wrote her reply with the same care, apologizing for her plain hand and explaining she had no family left to object, no dowry to offer, only patience and the habit of work. She sent a photograph taken by a traveling man who insisted she stand straight and look serious, as if seriousness were a virtue worth capturing. When the letter went, she felt lighter, as though the world had shifted enough to let her breathe. Elias's reply arrived in a crisp envelope. He praised her neat writing, her honesty. He promised a fair home and a fresh start. He sent a ticket west and instructions precise as a ledger. When the train finally groaned into the station at a place called Red Willow, Mara stepped down into a sky so wide it felt like a dare. Elias waited with a wagon, his hat tipped low. He was taller than she expected, his smile practiced, his eyes measuring. He helped her up and spoke kindly of the weather, the land, the distance from trouble. The ranch sat at the edge of scrub and grass, a collection of buildings that leaned into the wind as if bracing. The house was sturdier than the barn, but quiet in a way that made Mara listen for sounds that never came. Elias showed her the rooms, explained the chores. He did not touch her except when they stood before a justice 2 days later and promised themselves with words that felt heavy and final. That night, he slept on the other side of the bed, stiff as a fence post, and she thought that was decency. Decency lasted until the first argument, which came without warning and without volume. Elias did not raise his voice. He corrected. He explained how things were done, how mistakes reflected on him. He kept a book of accounts and wrote notes in it when he felt crossed, the scratch of pencil louder than anger. When Mara asked about the previous wife, Elias said only that she had been weak and the land had no use for weakness. The days filled quickly. Mara rose before light, cooked, cleaned, hauled water. She learned the rhythms of cattle and weather, the way dust settled into the seams of everything. She learned Elias's moods by the set of his jaw. He liked order and obedience. He disliked questions. He disliked neighbors most of all. When a family from downriver stopped by with a loaf of bread, Elias sent them away politely and then told Mara that friendliness was an invitation to ruin. At first, his wrongs were small and precise. He took her letters and read them before she could send them, said it was for safety. He counted the flour and scolded her for waste. He corrected her posture, her tone, her expressions. When she laughed too loudly at something he had said, he told her laughter invited disrespect. He forbade her from attending the occasional gatherings at the trading post, saying crowds bred trouble. Isolation came wrapped in reason. Winter hardened the land and the man with it. The cattle suffered, and Elias's patience thinned. When a calf was lost, he did not shout. He listed her failures and made her write them down. He kept the paper pinned near the stove as a reminder. He began to set tasks that could not be completed in the time he allowed, then punished her for failing to meet his standards. The punishments were not bruises that could be shown or words that could be quoted. They were deprivations and controls, nights made longer by cold and silence, meals delayed, sleep broken by demands. Mara learned to disappear inside herself. She counted steps between chores, recited recipes from memory, held on to the idea that endurance was a kind of victory. She told herself this was the price of survival, that she had chosen it and therefore must accept it. When she fell ill, Elias accused her of malingering and locked the medicine cabinet. She recovered because she had to. Spring brought green to the plains and strangers to the road. A preacher came once, dusted and earnest. Elias stood close, his hand firm on Mara's shoulder, answering for her. The preacher spoke of partnership and mercy. Elias smiled and offered him water and sent him on. That night, Elias wrote in his book for a long time, his pencil grinding the page. The worst came not in a single act but in a decision. Elias decided that Mara was property in a way the law did not name. He began to speak of her as an asset, something he had acquired with a ticket and a vow. When she objected to a plan that would send her alone to collect money owed from men she did not know, he told her fear was another weakness. When she refused, he locked the door and left her there until she agreed. He framed coercion as instruction, control as care. One afternoon, she found a stack of letters hidden beneath his account book. They were from women, dated years back, written in hands both hopeful and careful. Some trailed off mid-sentence. Others ended with apologies for perceived faults. One had a stain where tears had blurred ink. There was no record of what had become of them. Elias came in and took the letters without comment, then added a new rule to his book: no touching his things. Mara's resolve formed quietly. She began to save small things: buttons, a length of twine, a bit of jerky wrapped in cloth. She memorized the way the stars shifted, the direction of the river. She watched for moments when Elias's routine slipped. Escape was not a plan yet, it was a possibility, a way to keep breathing. The chance came when a storm broke hard and sudden, turning the road to mud and the sky to a low ceiling. Elias was furious at the weather as if it were a person. He sent Mara out to secure the animals while he stayed inside to protect the books. She worked until her hands ached and the rain soaked her through. When she came back, shivering, Elias told her she had done it wrong and sent her back out. Something in her shifted then, a quiet refusal. She did not go back to the barn. She went to the wagon and took the small bundle she had hidden. She walked into the rain, away from the house, keeping the river to her left as she had planned. She walked until the storm thinned and the world smelled clean and sharp. She walked through fear like a field, not stopping to look at it. By morning, she reached a cluster of buildings that called itself a town. She found the sheriff, a tired man with a kind voice, and told him what she could without shaking. He listened, asked questions, wrote things down. He sent a deputy back with her. Elias was gone when they arrived, the house stripped of ledgers and letters, the book burned in the stove. The ranch stood empty, its order an illusion. In the weeks that followed, stories surfaced, each incomplete, each similar enough to form a shape. Women who had answered ads, who had traveled alone into promises, who had vanished into quiet places. Elias Crowder was not found. The land swallowed him as it had swallowed others. Mara did not stay in Red Willow. She moved on, working where she could, choosing rooms with windows and neighbors. She learned to speak when something felt wrong and to leave before it became a rule. The West did not become kinder, but she learned how to be strong without becoming hard. And in the telling of what had been done to her, she found a power Elias had never expected, one that did not need his name to exist.